Get started. We have a lot of material to go through. Welcome everyone to our first session of this webinar series on Facebook as a research tool. We're really pleased to see so many people here. And in fact, we were actually a bit overwhelmed with how much demand there seems to be for this training session. So we really hope you find this helpful for your own research and you're taking a lot away in terms of ideas. In this session, we are focusing, yeah, that's okay. Sorry, I could as the slide master. So in this session, we're focusing first a bit on kind of why we think Facebook is a powerful research tool. And I mean, just kind of background in terms of our credentials. We have used Facebook as a way to recruit participants to a series of survey experiments in different countries around the world. And we've also done some methodological work that I will actually present and so on. So we do think that we kind of know a bit what we're doing, but of course there's always more to learn. So I would talk first a bit kind of why we think Facebook is a good research tool, and then focus on this first question of how to recruit participants for your research through Facebook, and in particular how to set up a Facebook ad campaign. I will then really, kind of give you a hands-on practical session on how to do this. And at the end, we will have time for Q&A. So this is a webinar because we're quite a few people. So we turned off your ability to use mics and video, but please use the chat function, or there's also a QA function. We are following both. We will keep an eye on things and try to answer questions along the way as we're explaining things. Anything that we can't pick up, we will just do at the end. We do have quite a packed session today, so we might go a bit over the hour, but I hope that's okay. Just to let you know, we're recording this session. You're not seeing or anything, it's just us here. So hopefully that's okay. But we do want to make this available for other people who are not able to attend. Okay, so let's get started. As you know, all of you know that social media is extremely powerful, and we have seen an incredible rise in the use of social media platforms around the globe in the last 10-15 years. And we are focusing today on Facebook, but the idea of how this works is kind of that applies to any kind of social media platform, right? What we're doing is we're buying advertisement content or a space on Facebook, and this is how we recruit participants for our research, but you could do that in other platforms as well. But what is remarkable, if you look here at the reach that Facebook has, so there's about 2.8 billion active users on the platform. That's about 35% of the world population. So that's a lot. So kind of moving on to why we think research, is quite, could be quite helpful to do on Facebook. There's different things why you might want to use it. So first of all, you might want to use it for gathering information from users directly. So what we mean here is you use the user base of Facebook or other social media platforms, and you see them as potential participants, right? We are social scientists. We're often interested in what people think, how they behave, the experiences they have, and so on. And so this might be one way for you to use the platform to run a survey, for example. However, I should probably say from the beginning, if you are interested in high quality representative samples, you need a random probability sample, and that you cannot really do on Facebook, simply because Facebook users will not be representative of the population. But there are ways to deal with this, and we will cover this mainly next week. The other reason why you might want to use Facebook participants or users is to conduct experiments. And we see that more and more, that we incorporate experiments in surveys, or we use kind of interventions and so on, and you need participants for this. And then you're mainly interested in internal validity, and therefore these not necessarily representative samples are absolutely fine. The other reason why you might want to use Facebook for research is to to kind of gather information about users more indirectly. So we do see, like fascinating research about extracting data from these platforms. Yeah, using the API, for example, there's a lot of public posts or public profiles, social links, and so on. We're not going to cover this in the webinar series now, but we might do so in the future if there's demand for this. And then the third reason why you might want to use this platform is to kind of intervene more directly, run an experiment on the platform, and then use that to kind of see how things either affect people on the platform or even in the real world. And we have one session on this as well. So thinking about kind of the advantages of using Facebook for your research, we believe that there's a real advantage of having a direct, easy access to a lot of people. We're talking 2.8 billion that are active on that platform. And the easy access might not seem so easy at the moment, but that's what we are trying to do here, right? We're trying to kind of explain you why we think it easy. It's also direct, right? You don't deal with a survey company, for example. You really set all the parameters, in your data collection, rather than having to rely on survey companies that are not always transparent about everything. And then, of course, it's online, yeah. So that means all these restrictions we faced, particularly in the last kind of 1.5 to 2 years, pandemic, travel restrictions, and so on. It is much easier to do research online nowadays, and therefore that's kind of another really big advantage here. Second, and what you hear a lot, is that it's low cost. And I'll just give you here a comparative example of the costs we paid for 2 surveys we run in the UK earlier this year. One we've done through Facebook, and one we've done through a commercial survey company. And the cost difference is really massive. So as you can see here, right? And that's not unusual. Yeah. So that is completed responses. Both costs are for completed responses. Okay. So that's a huge difference. Of course, also I'm lucky I'm based in the UK, so I have access to research funds, but not everyone has, right? So what we also see is that this is particularly attractive to PhD students, for example, but also researchers being based in, kind of less resourceful countries. And this can really make a difference to be able to do research. The other advantage of using Facebook for data collection is that you can really target specific populations you're interested in. So that might be really hard to reach populations, like refugees, for example, or specific occupational groups, but sometimes you're just interested in a specific group. And like we run, a study on the supporters of the ruling party in Turkey, and our research question was just focusing on that particular group. And Facebook will give you tools to really reach just specific groups you are interested in. And then lastly, one big advantage is the global reach. Yeah. So kind of look at the map that we have prepared for you here. This is data for like kind of population percentages in each country across the world that has active Facebook users. The only countries that do not have Facebook users are Cuba and North Korea, because they block the site. But even in China and Russia, there are some people who kind of make it through the firewalls. Of course, these countries in particular, they have alternatives to Facebook. But again, the logic would be kind of the same. You could purchase advertisement space there and also recruit people. But a lot of the regions in the world are really well covered. And we're talking, millions and millions of people that use Facebook throughout the world. And this is kind of what we're leveraging here, right? That we can run. I'm a comparativist. I'm interested in doing research in many countries, and this is a tool that allows me to just very easily and quick collect data from all different countries around the world. Okay. I'm not paying too much attention to the chat, so maybe I could have to do a bit of writing in between, but we will come back to these questions at the end, I promise. Okay, so then let me now focus on kind of the whole logic about, what do you mean with like recruiting research participants through Facebook? It's a, kind of very simple kind of step, like the way you should think about it. First of all, you do need a Facebook account, and I would assume many of you do have Facebook accounts already. But in addition, you also need a Facebook page. And will talk a bit more about kind of how to set this up. Once you have a Facebook page, you can purchase advertisement space on Facebook. And anyone who is active in social media, I'm sure you have seen, that you sometimes get really targeted, scarily targeted Facebook advertisement. And this is kind of what you're doing as well. Yeah. So you buy your ads, you run your ads, and then it's up to the user who's kind of scrolling through their feed, whether they want to click on your ad or not. What we then do in our research is we direct users from kind of clicking on the ad to a survey platform. So we use Qualtrics, but SurveyMonkey. If you don't have resources, you could also use Google Form, which is of course much simpler. It doesn't really allow for experiments and so on. But you kind of take your respondents then to your survey, and then they complete the survey completely outside of the Facebook world, right? So you use Facebook to find people, yeah, to take part in your study. So just to kind of show you like how our ads look like, they look really simple. We just used a microphone to be like, make your voice heard, and so on. And then the idea is, you see that in your feed, you click on this ad, and it takes you then to that Qualtrics page. Just because I already saw like in the side of my eye that somebody asked about kind of GDPR and data protection and so on. Just a kind of short reflection on ethics here. And that probably deserves like a longer session, but just to mention it. What we're trying to do here is, kind of recruit individuals to answer questions and give us information about themselves. In any case, you will need ethical approval from your institution. Yeah, that is really, really important. And then, kind of where this affects your ethical approval is data collection, and in particular participant recruitment. This is the section that you need to complete here, where the Facebook tool comes in. What should you consider here? What might affect your ethics in your study is, on the one hand, ad content. So and we'll talk a bit more about that next week. It's also a question like, do you use incentives or payment and so on? But also, who is your target population? Are you targeting the entire population of a country, or are you just kind of focusing on very particular groups? Yeah, so I heard about fascinating studies of like, Polish migrants across Europe. Yeah, so then, you would kind of use very different strategies, but one needs to be careful in not being discriminatory. Then the other thing is that I should mention, that kind of goes into this GDPR question, is there's no information data that Facebook shares with you, right? The only thing you do is you buy ads on Facebook, and then people self-select into clicking on your ad or not. Yeah. What is then important for you when you kind of write up your ethics application is that you need this kind of consent page, but that will be on your landing page before people start filling in the survey. Okay. So that's kind of just a reflection. We can talk more about this, but you need to take this into account. So then one of the, I keep mentioning Facebook ads and so on. So this is kind of what we will focus on in this session. So when you kind of, purchase the Facebook advertisement space, you have different tools, yeah, so that you kind of, it directs you towards the Facebook advertisement manager that will talk more about. And then you have different choices in how to kind of set up your advertisement that will very much affect your sample and what you get out in the end. And there's different things you can do. The campaign objectives, this is what I'm going to focus on now, is basically the algorithm that Facebook uses to kind of place your advertisement and who they target. You also can play with the budget. You can set who your audience will be. Yeah, maybe you're just interested in women, maybe you're just interested in younger people. You can decide all of this. And then of course you can do a lot with your advertisement content. And the audience and advertisement content, we will do next week. And then today I'm just going to focus on the campaign objectives. So let me kind of go into what the campaign objectives are. this is, as I said, it's just kind of the optimization algorithm that Facebook uses. And this is how they make their money, and how all the kind of, vendors that advertise on Facebook sell their products, right? It's a strength of Facebook, but it could potentially be a weakness for us in terms of doing research with this, right? Because it might very much influence who actually sees your advertisement. So the three kind of broad campaigns that Facebook is using is first reach, and it's kind of in the name. So what that means is that Facebook just maximizes how many people will see your advertisement. And this could be super kind of useful when you do like an election campaign or public health campaign or something like this. You just want people to see your information. The second is the second is traffic. And here the idea is you don't want just people to see your ad, but you want them to click on your ad. And this is kind of a different tool, right? You want kind of people to then kind of be directed towards your website, for example, where they then can purchase something, or in our case, they start doing a survey. The difference between traffic and conversion is that traffic really maximizes link clickers, while conversion maximizes that somebody is taking an action outside Facebook. So if you think about kind of the commercial world, that would be, the action could be that somebody buys something. Yeah. In our case, the way we use conversion is that we want people to complete the survey. Yeah. So we define the action as completed the survey. And then we kind of tell Facebook basically that this happened, and then they learn from this, and then they maximize, they kind of adapt the algorithm accordingly. Okay, we'll talk a bit more about the conversion, because that is the best one, and I will show you now why we think that is the case. So what we've done is we did a little kind of methodological work on this, because we suspected that it really matters how you set up Facebook, and that it affects how your sample will look like. So what we've done is we did survey experiments in several countries, but here I'm just going to show you results for 4 countries. We ran a survey through Qualtrics earlier this year, and for each country that we kind of included, we had a target of 1,800 completed responses. That's very typical, right? When you especially do experiments or something like this, you have like power calculation, and I need to hit that target. So what we've done is, in each of the countries, we simultaneously ran 3 or 2 parallel campaigns, on Facebook, where we just altered the settings. And what we wanted to know is, how do these different campaigns compare to each other in how they perform? If you want to know more about this, we have working paper on this that is available. We already linked it to the website that we used also to advertise this webinar series. So now looking at the results, here I'm just showing you the 3 countries, just because there was no more space on the slide. But what you see is, we started out collecting data in the UK, where we used all 3 available campaign objectives. And what you see is that reach, does what it does. The first line shows kind of how many people saw our ad, and you see it's a lot of people who saw the ad. But if you look in the next line, only 194 clicked on the ad, and only 6 people actually completed our survey. When you look at the other 2 campaigns, right, there's fewer people who saw the ad and clicked on it, but many more people actually completed the ad. Yeah, so between traffic and conversion, that's more obvious even in Turkey and Spain, where you see, yeah, sure, more people clicked on our ads. Yeah, so kind of 18,000 in the 2 countries. But when it came to completing our survey, they were not really good. And this also very much affected the costs that we paid per completed survey. In every case, including also the Czech Republic, we paid sometimes well under £1 per completed survey, which is really cheap for anyone who has done surveys. If you look at, for example, reach, I mean, that is just way too much money for one completed survey. So we dropped that completely because we're like, don't use reach. That's not good for research. Not if you want to recruit research participants, let's say. And then also traffic gets quite expensive, especially in smaller countries where the pool of Facebook users just gets smaller. Yeah, so it takes more time and so on. And that's also the next question. What we looked at, what we see is that it takes much longer to reach your target population in terms of sample size if you use traffic compared to conversion. Yeah, so in terms of price and speed, you're much better off in using conversion. The next question was quality. So could it be that, maybe traffic, kind of attracts better survey takers, but that's not the case. So we had different things that we looked at. The first line there is, passed an attention check. That's kind of quite typical for survey research. We really put that at the end of the survey to see whether they were still reading what we wanted them to read. And most people passed the attention check in all countries, but conversion actually did a bit better, especially in Turkey and the Czech Republic. And then lastly, you might be worried about the sample. So first of all, here we're just comparing conversion and traffic for the UK, where we had a reasonable number of people also in traffic. And we're just looking at kind of, marginal distributions among some, kind of key demographics. And what you see is, for example, that, we always recruit more men, older people, and more educated people that are more interested in politics than what we would expect based on kind of population benchmarks, which is kind of based on representative data or census data. And so that's always the case, whether we use conversion or traffic. So even just traffic, manages to kind of get us more people into clicking on our survey, it doesn't help us to get a more kind of, let's say, representative sample. Yeah. So the sample will always be unrepresentative, but they don't really differ. Yeah. So we don't gain something from using traffic here necessarily. Next week, we will actually go much more into detail about this, and I will show you it is possible to create a relatively good sample in terms of representativeness to get close to these population benchmarks by using another tool in Facebook, which is targeting, and that's really powerful as well. So in sum, what we have learned so far here is that indeed, using Facebook can help you to really recruit low-cost samples across the world. So we also collected data in Brazil and Hungary, and it's really, really cheap, yeah, especially compared to commercial companies. In everything we looked at, conversion as the main setting for your advertisement always outperforms traffic, and especially reach. Because it helps us to kind of distinguish between people just clicking on links and people actually doing the action you want, which is complete the survey. It's much better in terms of cost, recruitment speed, without really sacrificing response quality or the sample characteristics. Okay, so bottom line, use conversion. Conversion is also the most difficult thing to set up. So this is why I will focus a lot now in the practical session on how to do this. Okay. So I'm handing over to Aykut now.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, we are receiving many questions. I haven't yet been answered. To respond to them, I think Anya will do her best. And if not, we will have a Q&A session in which we will respond to questions at the end of this session. Okay, so in the rest of this session, I will just discuss how you can establish this conversion and traffic campaigns. First of all, I will start with discussing what you need to do even before starting to create your first advertisement campaign, the very first step. Then I will introduce you Facebook Advertisement Manager. This is the website you will need to use for most of the actions that you will take during creating your advertisement. And then we will just create a traffic campaign in just 5 minutes. Of course, Anya has just told you that conversion campaigns outperform traffic campaigns, but steps that you need to take to create a traffic campaign is a subset of steps that you need to take to create a conversion campaign, and it is easier. And in that sense, and also you might actually prefer to create a traffic campaign, for example, if you will just collect very limited amount of data and you don't want to deal with creating conversion infrastructure. For all those reasons, we will start with a traffic campaign. And then we will just go through steps you need to take to create your first conversion campaign. Okay. So first of all, you need to have a personal Facebook account to create advertisements on Facebook. The important thing here is that Facebook users will not interact or engage with your personal Facebook account. They will not see your personal Facebook account, but you will need that to access Facebook Advertisement Manager and Facebook Business Manager. Now, if you don't have a personal Facebook account, you need to create one. And if you just immediately try advertising after creating a personal Facebook account, then Facebook, for security reasons, Facebook will ask you to confirm your identity. You will need to provide an image of your ID card or phone, and then phone number, and then your identity will be confirmed. In addition to Facebook account, you also need to have a Facebook page. Now, Facebook users will not see your personal Facebook account, but they will see and interact with your Facebook page. Your advertisements will be published through your Facebook page. In that sense, this is something that you will need to do. Now, if you go to Facebook Advertisement Manager without having a Facebook page, then Advertisement Manager will just offer you an easy setup tool with just asking you to create a page. And if you click here, create a page, then you will see a setup tool. You will just need to enter a new page name, a generic page name. You can choose category under which your ads will fall, your page will fall, and then you will choose a profile picture, and that is it basically. Then you will be ready to go. Sorry. Okay. Now, in our advertisements, we used University of Glasgow's Facebook page. We contacted University of Glasgow's marketing department. They directed us to social media company who lets University of Glasgow's social media accounts, and then they allowed us to advertise through University of Glasgow page. Our ads were not visible, or our ads were not on University of Glasgow page. They were published through University of Glasgow page, which means that Facebook users who clicked on our advertisements could go and who clicked on our advertisements, who clicked on our advertisements could go to University of Glasgow page. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages for using your university page if you happen to get permission for that. One advantage, for example, is that in the UK, when we conducted our surveys in the UK, we were more credible. Everyone about the University of Glasgow. It's a credible brand, so people were, we saw in responses that credibility. On the other hand, when we conducted our own survey in Turkey, a country in which some segments, some portions of population are suspicious about anything that is foreign, a British institution asking very sensitive questions just raised suspicions. And we could see again in Facebook comments that some people were suspicious why University of Glasgow was interested in politics of Turkey. So in the sense, this is something you need to take into account. For us, main reason to use University of Glasgow's page was basically to make payments to Facebook easier. So if your money, if finance is provided by a big fund managed by the university, then you can choose again to use your university page. In my own studies, I use a page that I have created for myself. And again, people click on the title, go and visit my page to see whether it's credible or not. Okay, finally, once you have completed, if you have your personal Facebook account and your page, then you can go and start creating advertisements on Facebook Advertisement Manager, following the URL link provided here. Now, here you see the face of Facebook Advertisement Manager. This is the website you will use for creating advertisements. Now, as you see, there's a green create button. If you just click on that green create button, an easy setup tool for creating advertisements on Facebook will be opened for you. In this part, you will see all advertisements and advertisement campaigns that you created. Here, Facebook just offers you many metrics to watch the performance of ads you have created. So you can just follow how your ads are performing. And finally, most importantly, to understand the structure of Facebook Ads Manager, here you see the hierarchical structure: campaigns, ad sets, and ads. Now, this hierarchical structure of Facebook is important because when you are creating any advertisement on Facebook, you will need to go through these three levels. The broadest level is campaign level. This is the level at which you make choices that will determine optimization algorithms that are available to you. Anya has just discussed basically options, campaign objectives, conversion, traffic, and reach. This is where you are selecting one of those. Now, reflecting this hierarchical nature, each campaign might include more than one ad set, but vice versa is not true. Second comes ad set level. At this level, you will make choices that will determine the audience, budget, and schedule of your ads. Now, again, reflecting the hierarchical nature, each ad set might include more than one advertisement, but vice versa is not true. And finally, it is the ad level. This is the level at which you are finally creating your advertisements, choosing images, adding text, and so on. Now, as you see here, you can just, this is basically this kind of a structure Facebook advertisement is organized through, and it reflects what is the logic of this hierarchical structure. Well, it just makes it easy for Facebook to use its optimization algorithms. So you can, let's say that your campaign is targeting women, and you just divided them into two categories: old women and young women. Old woman at set 1 and young woman at set 2. And for each category, you just created two different ads: 2 ads for young women, 2 ads for old women. Then Facebook will basically see which of these advertisements are working best for you, and then channel resources towards that advertisement. That is why Advertisement Manager is organized through a hierarchical structure. But as we will discuss next week, it might make things a bit more difficult for researchers because we are also after creating representative samples. Now, at this point, we can just go through Facebook Advertisement Manager and try to create basically a campaign. We just clicked on that green create button we had seen in the face of Facebook Advertisement Manager, and it just opened an easy setup tool. We will choose, first of all, we will make choices at the campaign level. We will choose our campaign name. We will decide whether it falls under special ad categories or not. Now, I have seen a question about this actually, special ad categories. Basically, Facebook, based on developments during the last few years, Facebook now asks you to declare if your ads are related to credit, employment, housing, and most importantly for us, social issues, elections, or politics. If your advertisement is related to those issues, then you will need to declare it as special ad category, and you will need to be registered in the country that you will be publishing your ad, which creates a more procedure, of course. Now, of course, our ads are about issues, social issues. Our surveys are about social issues. On the other hand, if you are not using political images in your advertisements, and if you are not using a political text, then you don't need to declare your ads as special ad categories. That was our experience. In our ads, we were basically just asking people to join our survey, which was about current issues, social issues, political issues. We told that in our ads, but it was still okay unless we just use political images. Then Facebook asked us to declare it as special ad categories and rejected our ads if we did not do so. So this is one thing to keep in mind here. And then again, you are making choices at campaign level. Buying type, it is campaign objective is traffic. Buying type is auction for this particular campaign. You can use A/B tests in which basically you can just use different variations, small variations of your campaign, your advertisements to see which one will work best. And you can use campaign budget optimization to allow Facebook to channel resources through ad sets and ads that will work best. We didn't use that though, because we wanted to see how campaigns would do without Facebook's intervention. Now, then comes ad set level. At this level, you will need to basically choose the audience and budget of your ad. First of all, Facebook is asking us, since we have chosen traffic as our campaign objective, where we want to drive traffic. And since it will be Qualtrics or survey platform for most of us, we will just choose website here. Then it is the time to choose budget. Now, Facebook never guarantees a certain budget, or Facebook never guarantees a certain number of survey participants for a survey for a certain cost. The return of your ad is never guaranteed in other way. What you do is that Anya has explained, to buy advertisement space on Facebook. Now, you can buy advertisement space through daily budgets. That is, you tell Facebook that you want advertisement space worth £10, £20 per day, and then Facebook spends that amount throughout the day. We always did that, and it returned good results. You can also choose campaign level, campaign budget. In that case, Facebook will spend the entire money. And then you schedule your ad. That is when you want your ad to start running, once you publish it and once it is approved by Facebook. You choose the target, what is the audience, and we will discuss this more next week. What should be the audience of your ad? Optimization algorithm, given that we are using traffic, you will be able to choose link clicks as your optimization algorithms. Conversion is not available here because we are not using conversion. And placements, you can choose on which platforms you want to use your advertisements. We always picked automatic placements so that Facebook can just see which platform is most, on which platform our ads perform best, and channel resources towards that platform again. Finally, we are at the ad level. This is where we will be creating our campaign, our advertisements. Now, we choose which page we want our advertisements to be published through. And then we just choose image or video that we want to use in our advertisements. We choose the text, we enter the headline, and here you are entering the URL, the website that you want you want Facebook users clicking on your ad to be taken to. So since in our case it is Qualtrics, we want people who click on our ads to be directed to Qualtrics. This is where you need to enter. You will have a chance to review to see how your ad will look like. And in our case, this was one of the ads that we created. Basically, you can see it here. And below, there will be a green publish button. Once you click the publish button, Facebook will just send this ad for a review that will be conducted by Facebook Nation algorithm. We can discuss this in more detail next week. And then basically you have just created your advertisement. Now what? Now, very briefly, let's go back to some of the results Anya has presented, and let's discuss what you should expect from this kind of a campaign in which you use traffic as campaign objective and no targeting at all. Now, this campaign costed us, in UK, we recruited 500 participants and the cost was 34 pence per successful survey completion. It is not bad, it was very good, but then using conversion, we could decrease costs in the UK by 30%. In Turkey, on the other hand, things didn't go that well. This is from a different study. Now, we were just doing a pre-test and many people clicked on our ad. The problem was not that people didn't click on our ad. However, people who clicked on our ad in Turkey came to our survey and did not give consent to our survey, or just the dropout rate was very high. On the other hand, Facebook was perceiving all of these link clicks as successful events, since these people were clicking on link and this is a traffic campaign, and just optimizing towards these people, sending us more of these people. And this, of course, increased our cost to nearly £1. When we started using conversion, on the other hand, we could just decrease costs very significantly to 20 pence and so on. So traffic can sometimes work nearly good as conversion, but in other cases, we just saw that it was giving us much worse results. And also Anya has just discussed how demographics could be very unbalanced when you don't use any targeting. So basically, what I am trying to say here is that you can create a Facebook advertisement campaign in 5 minutes following steps that I already show you. Yet, and you might be satisfied with this, in some countries it will work well enough. On the other hand, there are some steps that you can take if you want to improve the performance of your ads. First of all, you can use conversion campaign to decrease your costs. And I will just show how you can use conversion campaigns to decrease costs. You can also use demographic targeting to increase representativeness, and you can just customize your advertisement content, use more appealing advertisements to decrease costs and increase representativeness in the same time. These latter two issues will be discussed in next week's session. Now let's focus on conversion. How does conversion workflow happen? How did our conversion campaigns work? Now, Facebook users saw our advertisement on Facebook. If they clicked on our advertisement, they were directed to the survey page hosted on Qualtrics. Now, this is the same with all Facebook campaigns. This is same in traffic and conversion. And then at this point, they are separated. In a conversion campaign, in our conversion campaign, if the Facebook user completed the survey on Qualtrics, then she was directed to a thank you page hosted on WordPress. And that WordPress recorded this page visit as an event, as a user action, as a valuable user action that we want to optimize towards, and sent information back to Facebook about this event. And Facebook optimized its ad delivery based on this information. Now, this is how our conversion campaign worked. Of course, one thing that you might do differently from us is to use Qualtrics is to avoid using a WordPress web page, a third web page. Actually, I will discuss in a bit why we decided to use a third web page. Apart from that, this same, your conversion campaign should also follow the same structure. So now let's start focusing on the setting up process. First of all, what do you need to do before beginning? Facebook Advertisement Manager will be enough for you for a traffic campaign. But if you want to set up a conversion campaign, then you will also need to use Facebook Business Manager, the broader roof in which Facebook Advertisement Manager is also located. So basically, you will need to visit business.facebook.com and start a user account, which is very easy for yourself. And as you see, there's on the left, you see Events Manager. Events Manager is where most of actions will take place. So you will have to visit Facebook Events Manager as well for some of the actions or some of the things you need to do to create your first advertisement campaign. And you should decide, in addition to this, which web page you will be using for your conversion campaign. Now, the intuitive choice, of course, here is to just use Qualtrics or whatever survey platform you have to send data to Facebook. Facebook users are already on Qualtrics. After all, why use a third page? Now, our choice was to use a third web page, a WordPress, basically, for 3 reasons. First of all, it was easier to implement as Facebook offers a partner integration setup tool, and so no coding skill is necessary. Secondly, we wanted to distinguish survey completers very clearly from dropouts or those who didn't give consent to us, and directing survey completers to a WordPress page was a neat way to do that. I'm not sure how you do that on Qualtrics, given that you have only one URL link. maybe you can. And finally, this is something that is related to one of the most recent challenges Facebook is dealing with, among many challenges, of course. Now, you need to claim domain ownership of your web page if you want to advertise to Apple iOS users as well, or if you want to maximize performance of your ads among Apple iOS users. This is something that occurred after Apple basically decided to give an option to iOS users to opt out of tracking. If you are using Facebook on your Apple iPhone, basically you might also have received a warning giving you an option to opt out of tracking. Of course, this is bad news. It was bad news for Facebook, because if you opt out of tracking, Facebook will not be able to track you, and then metrics that are central to Facebook's algorithms, optimization algorithms, will not be reliable. To avoid with that situation, Facebook has developed a new protocol, basically, which requires you to claim ownership of your domain. I don't know how you can do that with Qualtrics again, given that you don't own Qualtrics. But in our case, it was again very easy to do that with WordPress. So basically, based on these reasons, we just use a third web page for our conversion campaigns. If you don't have a personal web page, it is easy to buy a new domain and just you will just need to create a thank you page, basically on that your new website. Okay, once you have cleared these steps, there are basically the rest is formed of two other steps. One, you will need to create a conversion infrastructure, set up a conversion infrastructure. You will need to do that only once. It should take 1 or 2 hours, maybe less, for you to do that. Basically, you will create a Facebook pixel code. This is the code that will carry information between Facebook and your WordPress or your Word page, whichever web page you will be using. Secondly, you will install this code to your website. And finally, after installing that code to your website, basically after introducing your website to your Facebook account, Facebook ad account, you will define your events. That is, you will tell Facebook which user actions on Facebook are valuable actions, which user actions should be tracked and optimized towards by Facebook. Now, these 3 steps, I think they are quite intuitive, but unfortunately, there are 2 more things that you need to do if you need to maximize performance of your ads for iOS users as well. You will need to verify domain ownership, as I have just explained, and you will need to prioritize your events on your domain. These might sound a bit intimidating, but they are not. We will just go through that. It basically takes a couple steps, and it doesn't require you to have any coding skills at all. And once you set up your conversion infrastructure, the rest is nearly same with creating a traffic campaign. And each time that you want to create a conversion campaign, you will need to just go to Facebook Ads Manager and go through similar steps, and you will just create your advertisement. Okay, now let's focus on how to set up a conversion infrastructure. I will go through steps one by one. First of all, now this is, you remember this screenshot? This is the screenshot you will see if you try to create a campaign on Facebook Advertisement Manager. Since you don't have a pixel yet, that is, you don't created the code, if you want to create, if you selected conversion as your campaign objective, at the next step, Facebook is asking you to create a pixel. You can just click on create a pixel button here, create a pixel button here. And once you clicked on this button, basically it just takes seconds. You will choose a pixel name and your first pixel will be created. Facebook also offers you an easy setup tool to continue installing your pixel on your website. So the next thing then that you need to do is to install this code, Facebook Pixel, to your website. And if you haven't yet installed it, if you created it but haven't installed it, you might see a warning in Facebook Advertisement Manager when you try to create a campaign telling you, hey, you need to verify your pixel. And you can just, again, click on Verify Pixel button here if you have somehow got out of setup tool. Now, once you clicked on that verify pixel button, Facebook will offer you 3 options to install Facebook pixel code on your website. You can basically install it using a partner integration. That is, for most frequently used websites, Facebook is offering an easy setup tool, basically. You can choose to manually add your pixel code to your website. Unfortunately for Qualtrics, if you want to put your pixel code on Qualtrics, then that's how you will go. You will manually add pixel code to website. And in our handbook, we will give a link about this one. And finally, you can email instructions to a developer as well. Now, just to add, we are going through steps, but Facebook Advertisement Manager is not always linear, which means that there are a couple different ways in which you can perform these things. So at the moment, we are just following easy setup tool that has been opened for us. But if somehow you just lose track, you can easily go to Events Manager and choose Partner Integration section to reach this particular page. And it is true for other screenshots that I will be sharing as well. There are usually a couple ways to do the same thing on Facebook. So yes, just to continue, once you clicked on it, Facebook will offer you a long list of partner integrations, including some of the most frequently used website platforms, such as Wix, Squarespace, Shopify, and so on. We picked WordPress. We already had a WordPress web page, so we picked WordPress. Then Facebook setup tool directs you to install, basically to download and install a plugin on your WordPress. And once you install it, which is just created for this purpose, basically you are connecting your WordPress account to your Facebook account so that they can now talk to each other. They can now send data to each other. Here you see Business Manager account, Ad account, and Facebook Pixel account. So your WordPress will be matched with the pixel you are using. So you have completed, just following this easy setup tool, you have completed installing your Facebook Pixel code to your website. Next thing to do is to tell Facebook what are some user actions that will be followed on your web page. To do that, you can just follow the setup tool that is still open. You will need to enter URL of your website, of the website that you will use. Or again, if somehow you just lost track, you can go to Events Manager section and click on Add Event, and it will open an event setup tool, easy event setup tool that will not require any coding skills. Here, basically what you are doing is that you are telling Facebook, anyone who sees the page that you created, the thank you page that you created on WordPress, should be counted as an event, as a user action to be optimized towards. So I am entering my URL and I'm choosing view content as an event here, which will, at the end of the day, as you see here, finalize the process of setting up an event. Now, this will be enough for you to create conversion campaigns on Facebook, but Facebook will warn you that this event has not been prioritized for iOS and for 14.5 or 15 or later versions of iOS. We have always prioritized our events, so I don't know how much your performance will be decreased if you don't prioritize events, but let's just go with the best practice and prioritize our events. First of all, you will need to verify your domain. You'll need to tell Facebook that you own the domain that you are using. In our case, this is again WordPress. For this, you can just go to Domains section under Brand Safety section of Business Manager and choose Add. You can also reach this page following the path I have just shown here: Events Manager, Aggregate Event Measurement, Configure Web Events, and Manage Domains. Now, Facebook is asking you your domain. In our case, this is the WordPress page we are using. And then Facebook is telling you that there are 3 ways basically to add your domain or verify your domain. The easiest we have experienced is to just update the DNS text record with your domain. Basically, you will just need to go to a website. In our case, it was namecheap.com, where we bought our domain from, and we just entered, as it is shown here, we just entered the code to our account on namecheap.com, and that was it. Now, once you did that, the only remaining thing is to prioritize your events. That is, you should tell Facebook that you should declare which events on that domain belongs to you. You will need to go for that to aggregated event measurement under Events Manager, and you will click Configure Web Events. You will click on the domain that you will use for this purpose. As you see, the domain that we just added in the fourth step is visible here. We will just click on this, and basically we will then choose which event. We had created, if you just seconds ago, a view content event. It should be visible here. It should be available here. We will choose view content event, and we will click on apply. Once we click on apply, then we have told Facebook that we own this domain, and this is the event. Basically, we are telling Facebook that, okay, on this domain for Apple users, still optimize towards this event. And this is the end of the process. Basically, after that point, what you should do is just review the success of your advertisements, test whether conversion works well or not. We will discuss these next week. So next week, we will first present results on the use of targeting and various advertisement content. It is very important. I think if you want to create advertisements, you should certainly watch that one. And then we will just go through several more steps for creating and following advertisements, how to test whether it is working properly, how to review your success, and how to review Facebook comments. And that will be it. Okay. Thank you very much for bearing with us so far. We will now, we have come at the end of the time, but we can still do a session, Q&A session, I guess. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to send us. And I want to also say that two things. One, recordings will be available on our website. And two, we will also release a handbook that will go through these steps after the end of our second session.
Great, thanks very much. There were quite a few questions, and it's fantastic. Many of the questions are really spot on, and show that some of you have really thought about this and have experience with all of this. As I already said in the chat, a lot of the questions actually refer to content we're covering next week. So I'm not going to go into this, but let me maybe just pick up a few questions that do probably correspond to what we talked about today. There were several questions about response rates. And I mean, when we think about response rates, you probably think more about the typical way we usually collect surveys or kind of draw samples, right? So you have your kind of sample frame, and then you randomly choose respondents that you want to interview. And that's incredibly important to create a representative sample, right? Those that have been randomly selected, you want them to participate. But response rates are not so much of an issue if you have a convenience sample, right? It is kind of, it is a convenience sample, and that's what it is. So the response rate, doesn't really feature in here. Because it's like you end up with the sample of people that you research that you have. I mean, there is no question that, a Facebook sample that you created and, the way we showed you already is not representative. It does not have the same kind of quality as, a random sample. But the problem is, if you do a proper random sample survey, it's incredibly expensive, right? And even if you work with commercial companies like YouGov and so on, they are drawing on pools of people that have signed up to YouGov and that get compensated for taking, so and so many surveys over time. Or Qualtrics has, a base of survey takers as well. You have MTurk, that's professional survey takers as well. So all of these have the same issue, right? They're convenience samples, and so the response rate doesn't really matter so much. But yeah, I can understand where the question comes from. There's a question about what do you do about comments that people leave under your ad? And that's a good question. We did have that, so that sometimes, how social media is, you sometimes then get quite hostile comments as well. What we did is we deleted them. So we did not engage with comments. We sometimes, when we saw comments that, kind of pointed out, oh, that there's something kind of odd, or like there was one like, oh, this link is not working or whatever. That was sometimes also good, but most of these questions, are just people starting to rant, and so you don't want them to also prime other people, because if you have a survey experiment, for example, that is a kind of information vignette. You don't want them to kind of talk about this, because that could prime a potential control group, right? And so what we did is we just kept an eye on it and kept deleting the comments, so that they're not visible, kind of later on. There was also a question about pixels, whether this kind of, where's the ethical boundary here? Are pixel cookies that kind of need special kind of consent? We actually haven't come across this, so I don't know, whether you thought about this, whether we should actually have additional consent for kind of the pixels kind of do feeding back some information to Facebook. I don't know, but yeah, it's a good question. Maybe we kind of need to come back to this and kind of pick this up maybe next week. Okay, so I'm not sure whether there's any other question that are kind of urgent now. Just to kind of say, this was the first session of 4. Next week, we talk a lot about kind of ad content, incentives, targeting, these kind of things that, people are obviously also interested in. In 2 weeks, we have Stefan Pertzke from GESIS was talking about these hard to reach populations. So if you really kind of want to, reach very specific populations, of what do you do then? And then the last session by Florian Froos from the LSE will focus on how to implement a field experiment when you directly kind of intervene in the content of Facebook, and not just kind of trying to recruit research participants. Okay, so that's the first session. As we said, the video will be made available and the slides as well. And we are working on a handbook where we're also kind of writing things down. So hopefully you found it helpful, and hopefully see you again in future sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.